Hey folks, welcome back to the Change Physician Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, and I'm here today with my co-host, Dr. Melissa Cady. Always fun to see you, Dr. Cady. What are we talking about today?
Well, I think there's something we have in common, and it happens to be the fact that we lost our hobbies along the way in medicine. And I think it might be good for us to talk about, maybe I'll just speak for myself, like some of the things. Oh, you just changed your background.
Well, I was just noticing I'm not only losing my hobbies, but I'm losing my virtual background. So,
so I thought maybe you wanted to be an astronaut or something.
Well, maybe that's my new hobby. I want to be an astronaut, or maybe I just want to go to the beach.
Yeah, I like the beach. That's kind of nice.
Okay, so that's my new hobby.
Yeah, he's playing with virtual backgrounds as hobby. No, seriously, I used to play a lot of sports as a teenager, and anything without a racket, I pretty much played. Loved being a participant, wasn't the best spectator because I wanted to move around and do things, and including I loved to dance. And I remember my brother and I we'd find the most recent, dancing moves and practice in front of the mirror, and you just build up your capacity and abilities, and would love to, I didn't even go drink during college. I would just go into these dance clubs and go dancing for hours on end. And I loved it, thrilled. I mean, I drink water and eat cherries at the bar, but I, didn't even drink. But my fun was just, going to the gym and dancing and hanging out with friends and watching movies. And, to me, it wasn't like a certain niche per se, but it was usually very kind of like physically oriented things. And I like to travel a little bit, but that traveling didn't come in till later in my life. But when I got to medicine, I was just so busy. I did some personal training in medical school a little bit, but that was few and far between. And you just get so busy and working so hard, and you're so focused on what people expect of you and what you're supposed to do, and doing a good job, and you just don't have much time for anything else. And a lot of that stuff went by the wayside, to the extent that my own husband's like, what planet did you live on the last 10 years? Because you should know this, and this. And, you're just so all consumed by medicine that there's a downside to that. And so I lost a lot of hobbies, but I'm sure you can probably elaborate on some of the things you lost.
Well, it's like anything is you come from this period of your life where you're generally involved and you're doing things. My bed keeps popping up in the background there. Stop that, bed. You're not part of my hobbies. Well, I do like to sleep. But no, I think about college, right? So you're active in college. I was in fraternity. I didn't go directly into medical school after college. I took a couple of years off, and during that time I was doing some fun things such as kayaking. I was a whitewater kayaker. I loved it. I used to do some martial arts when I was in college. I used to fish. I did lots of hiking. Used to hang out with my friends. And then somehow, you get into medical school and you lose everything. Now, I do remember this because I grew up in Carson City, Nevada, the Carson Tahoe area where we have mountains. And when I moved to Chicago for medical school, I actually wanted to do some of the stuff that I wanted to kayak. I wanted to hike. There was just nowhere to do it. They're like, oh, you can kayak on the Chicago River. I'm like, that's flat water kayaking. Come on, that's not kayaking. So you not only lose the opportunities because you're now in an environment, for many of us, if we move to go somewhere, that you may not know the area. You may not have people to connect with that can guide you, because some activities you actually don't want to do alone and you need other people with you. You start losing time where...
Right, here's the interruption of my other hobby.
There's a hobby.
He's purring, and I love animals. So anyway, he interrupted our show.
Oh, he can be one of the co-hosts on one of these episodes.
Just be a lot of purring.
Well, that's fine. The purring episode. But even something like that, I know. I'm sure if people had pets, you usually don't have pets when you're a medical student, and you lose that point of connection. I think for us, as well as the other standpoint, is then once you get into residency, it gets even busier. My wife and I were in residency at the same time. We ended up having kids during residency, which is a whole nother beast. So if you want to lose all your hobbies, is be in medicine, be in residency, and then have 2 kids, because then you're not going to have any at all. But what's really funny though is then you get out of it, and then it becomes very hard to well, I guess I'm generalizing everybody. It was very hard for me to define and pursue new hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean an active point. Like one of the reasons that we moved to Oregon, and particularly in this area, was like I want to find hobbies again. And that all being said, has been very like all the hobbies I used to have. Most of those I still don't do. Like I haven't been able to recapture them. I found other things, but I've never been able to, I guess, really have the breadth of hobbies that I used to have when I was younger. Now, is that all because I was a physician? Probably not, but I think that's a good portion of it was. Because when you have in that, however long, 10 or whatever years it is, 10, however long it is, that makes it really hard, I think, to go back into things. I don't know. What are your experiences there?
Well, I think so it's interesting because you can have you kind of came upon your hobbies in the past. Like actually some other things I used to love to draw, and I used to, there's a lot of calligraphy. Like there's things that I would just, and again, a very physical component of expression for me. But what I think is when you have certain hobbies you enjoyed in the past, and it's something this kind of a process for me is being intentional about putting yourself in an environment, or for me, even sometimes I'll just turn on the music while I'm making dinner. And if there's a certain, jam that I love, I'll just break in a dance, just inherently, naturally, I will do that. If I'm not resonating with it, it's not going to do that. But so that's kind of one way on your own. But if you can find a community or a tribe of people that do or like the same things, you have to kind of insert yourself into that, which I think is really great for physicians. If there's something you like to do in the past, is you could find that community, whether it's in person, online, or whatever it is, insert yourself in there, especially if you haven't been able to bridge or make connections outside of medicine, because so many of our friendships are with colleagues in medicine. And if you want people that are not just medicine focused, I think it's really healthy. I think it's a really healthy blend to find this group that has people like the same hobby, and then out of those people you might find that you resonate or really have a good connection with, and that it kind of it almost helps you lock that hobby in more, because you have that social anchor. And so I think that goes for a lot of things. I mean, of course, CrossFit and some of these other people out there have basically captivated people from the social anchor, even if, they're people do get hurt sometimes if they're not taught the right way to, pace themselves and listen to their body and not be, affected by peers pushing you beyond what you're ready for. But that's another topic. But I think for me, it has to be intentional. And if you can create a social anchor around it, and you get the dual benefit of more friendships outside of medicine and getting back into your passion, those are really important. But then I also think there's this part of what's called just exploration, and allowing yourself to just explore things that maybe you never thought of or never had been part of in the past. And some of those newer things for me, which I never had growing up, is gardening. And I find so many benefits to it, getting outside in the sunshine, a little bit of vitamin D production, really appreciating nature and the process of the nuances of what it takes to really create a healthy plant. There's so much to learn. And I'm really still a novice. I'm no master gardener or anything. But even the novelty of something sprouting up and growing right before you, and just the miraculousness of nature. So there's a lot of things that I get from that, and the physical activity. There's just a lot of variety of movement, and yeah, you just learn a lot of things. And if you create things that are not just like flowers that you don't eat, it's, you create some source of food, and it's a great skill to have, and it becomes, I think, a hobby for a lifetime. So I can see why people have done that, hobby for so long, because there's so many things that you can get from it. So those are my takes on some of that.
It made me wonder, how many are you planting? Lots of flowers that you can eat as compared to
Oh
flowers?
no, I don't usually plant flowers. It's funny, I've met people that, and that's the other thing, if you create hobbies, you create the capacity even to connect with people in the medical field that like the same thing. So you have something to talk about. So that's a thing that, my husband and I have talked about. He's really great at just having a point of connection. Huh?
It's like, is there an edible flower community? I mean, that makes me wonder. It's like
I'm sure there is
edible flowers, right? And
well, I'm sure there's some you shouldn't eat, and some that are disgusting, and then some that you can. I know you can.
Yeah.
Was it hibiscus?
I think you can eat
flower, you can eat that.
Please,
anyway,
people listening to this, don't follow
quote
our
me on that.
recommendations. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm not the person to talk to. No, but it is a good point that you pick up a hobby and then you find out other people that do it, and it's really exciting. I tend to plant like peppers, and I'll pick a new one every year just to try it. So it's a little bit of experimentation there, and yeah, it's a whole bunch of fun, and they can be beautiful too. So it can add to your exterior.
Well, I've been completely derailed by the whole edible flower concept, and if you stick in edible flowers.
Welcome to my co-host, Dr. Cuccaro. He can go off on a tangent.
It is just insane. He just put edible flowers and all this stuff. Edible flowers. How to enjoy edible flowers?
Yeah.
The Teleflora blog. So
did you verify that hibiscus was edible?
Yes, edible hibiscus is edible, along with marigolds, which I did not think you could eat, because I thought marigolds planted next to vegetables to keep pests away.
Yeah, that's what I learned. Very interesting.
Apparently has a tangy, spicy, bitter, or peppery flavor. It is referred to as the poor man's saffron.
See, now this is the whole point behind this podcast, is that the moment you just endeavor in something new, you create the opportunity for learning. And we tend to, as physicians, most of us, have some gratification from learning something and knowing something for the benefit of yourself or others.
Well, yeah, I guess that would be my hobby. I'd have to say that's probably my hobby. Is I love knowing. Like, that's like my thing. I just love it. So you said this out, and I get curious and I go into it. But it's interesting though, because you're talking about these communities. So have you had experience then with? I'm trying to think some of these websites. Like, there's like one called Events or something, or
Eventbrite?
Yeah, Eventbrite. Yeah, right. Where people have stuff and you can just sign up and go to these things.
Yeah.
Have you done it?
I think I did something online, but I wouldn't say from a hobby standpoint. I feel like I'm just on this new resurgence of exploring, and I've actually found a lot of gratification of just learning how to do things around the home. I like to be a DIY kind of person, and I like creating, I like fixing, I like, my nickname is Steve for a reason, because these societal roles that the man does, I just love that stuff. So, I could see myself being that person, helping build a home with my utility belt on and doing all the building, like literally. So anything around the house and the gardening, I've been getting a lot of gratification out of that, especially during the pandemic. So it's gives me more opportunity to do more things around the home, but I haven't really reached out, especially in these times, to try to connect with people for that, but I'm not opposed to it.
From those. And I guess if you're probably like, I'm not an extrovert, I'm definitely more, I think ambivert, but I'm more on the introverted side. But I think if you were an extrovert, and because that's another thing, is if you physicians, you're isolated, new practice environment, maybe you move to a different city, there are a lot of opportunities to to find those people. Like, again, when I went to move to Chicago, there's no white water in Chicago, but if there was white water, you don't want to kayak alone. It's the same way, I'm assuming, surfing, you're not supposed to surf alone. There's certain sports or certain hobbies and activities that you don't want to do alone.
Right.
So the internet and things like Eventbrite or whatever provides you at least a opportunity to connect with others to do that.
Right. Or Facebook.
Or Facebook. Yeah, I guess
other
Facebook.
Social media.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the hobbies though too, and I guess there's hobbies by but not osmosis. But I'm just thinking about my wife, right? Because she picked up. It was funny. We moved to Oregon, and she's always better than me. She actually started doing hobbies, and she started off with like baking, and then she became like a level 5 baker thing, because they actually have levels of baking or something. And then went back to sewing, and then we ended up with like 5 sewing machines because apparently you need more than one. And then, but then she got into knitting, man, and holy crap, it's actually been fun for me because it's not my hobby, but to see the joy that she gets as she's been learning this hobby and has developed her skill set. And then she gets excited and she tells me, and it's actually pretty interesting to not only then see as her knitting has improved, like she's really good now. Which is also good when you get free stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
Free stuff, free hats and this. But then she's moved into dyeing. But then what I've noticed is I actually pay more attention to knitters. So if you ever go to a conference or event, and I've seen it most actually, oddly enough, at medical conferences. I don't go to a ton of those anymore, but I always see the knitters, which I would never have noticed before. And they're like their own little community and their own little hobby. So, and I don't know where I'm going with that because it's not my hobby, but I'm sort of living vicariously through my wife's hobby. And so I have hobby voyeurism. I guess that's what you call it.
It's a new term. That's a new keyword I've never heard of before. That's actually, it makes me think of friends of mine that quilt. Quilting's a big thing. Mm. So there's all kinds of stuff. You could probably create your own thing, when it comes to defining what a hobby is. But you made me think of something really important. And sometimes I feel like if you don't know where to look and to know what you like, or, some people just love music or they're collectors and, they stay up with all those things, or sports or certain type of realm of sports. But if you have a spouse or children that have a love for something, I'll give an example. Like my husband loves to cook dinner together. It's a place of connection. It's a place for us to do something bonding. So sometimes I think maybe it's good to stop and assess the priorities in your life, the most important and valued relationships in your life, and maybe kind of observe the things that they value. Obviously, time with you would be probably really important if you have a healthy relationship, or if it needs mending, thinking of the things that they enjoy and maybe finding one of those things in some way that you can bridge or do maybe the same thing, learning more about what that passion is. My husband has a lot of passions, and I probably could be better at some of the passions, but the one thing that we do together is we love to travel, and we love to take walks together, and we love to have dinner together. Of course, this has been more prevalent with the pandemic, COVID-19. And so I've realized that sometimes if you can't figure out for yourself what your hobby is, maybe copycat somebody else to get a start and see how much you really enjoy it. And the dual benefit would be that relationship is enhanced. So with your children, you might find something that they probably would love to do with you, and everyone wins in that scenario. So that would be my suggestion.
Are you telling me I have to go learn how to knit now?
No, I'm not saying you have to knit, but do something you enjoy. I'm sure you love to travel together, or, it's not really as possible right now, but there's still ways to do it.
And we have done that. That's actually been something that as a family has been a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And because, this is the Change Physician podcast. So obviously we're talking about different changes that we've had. And one of the things that we've had in our life is we have pretty flexible lifestyle, because we have different sort of, I don't want to say non-traditional, but the way we've structured my wife and I's work environment is such that we have much more freedom of time. and we've done that because it's important to us. And so, yeah, you know, it's thinking about the trips that we've taken with my kids or our kids, I guess they're hers too. Yeah, it is fun, but I guess overall for the hobbies things is it's just if you've had hobbies in the past, you can always return to them because there's an opportunity. There's enough resources out there that you can do that. But there's also so many things to do, and we didn't even touch on this, and we probably too much for this episode. But if you want to learn something, you can. There's this thing called YouTube. So I mean, that's where my wife has learned a crap ton. She follows all these knitters and then this and that, and she's also really good about experimenting and being okay with ripping things apart again if she doesn't like how it ended up.
Exactly.
But there's those opportunities for that, and I think again from a physician standpoint, it does provide you these connections that the internet era allows us to do, is to meet people outside of our traditional medical viewpoint, or people who are inside that who have that same understanding of medicine. There's just a lot of opportunities to connect with this stuff. So I guess that's a long way to say is we lose our hobbies, but it doesn't mean that the hobbies are gone forever. We can always find them again.
That's a great way to wind up this episode on the Change Physician podcast. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode, and you all take care.
Well, I got one thing I'm going to add to that, though, before we go.
Go ahead. You know, I
just thought about that because I'm curious for the listeners out there is what are your hobbies? So please go to Facebook, find us at the Change Physician Facebook group there, and just post what your hobby is. I would love to hear what it is that you love to do it is not necessarily medicine. So that's what I'll end it on. And until next time, stay well.